Aloha. Hi. Good afternoon. So my name is Joelle de Weerdt. I know it's a hard last name. You can just say Joelle, that's totally fine. I'm really glad to be here today to talk about the research in Central America and specifically in Nicaragua that I'm running with my nonprofit organization. I would like to thank the whole team of Weerdt Trust for this fabulous organization and for the invitation. Also, Jorge, that suggested to the organization to invite me. So thank you so much. I'm really, really happy to be here. It's really a dream to be in Maui. It's very inspiring. So before we dive into the humpback whale world, I'd like to bring you in my world, talking about who I am and why I'm standing here in front of you. Like being said, I am a person, I had a child who dreamed to protect whales and dolphins. Probably a lot of people had that dream, but okay. I felt at that moment that was what I had to do. So therefore, I studied biology, and as mentioned, I was totally lost in the world of research in biology. I found everything very fascinating, and in the end, I got my master in biodiversity and ecosystems, and I did my master about mangroves. So I'm also a wood biologist. So in 2010, you got it. I didn't see a whale in my entire life. I didn't see a dolphin, but I was sure I wanted to do something for whale and dolphin conservation. So I knew that working in whale and dolphin research was going to be hard because everyone was always repeating that it's very competitive, there is no job, it's really hard. So what I did, I started volunteering. I went to Madagascar where we saw this humpback whale birth. Okay, I didn't witness the birth, I saw the newborn after because I was having my breakfast when the calf was born. And then I joined the team, okay? But it was a fabulous experience, and that's where I actually connected with humpback whales. After I went to Great Britain, to Slovenia, and also to Mexico. And I studied there dolphins and whales. In between all those volunteering, I was still working as a wood biology in the Africa Museum in Belgium. It was very interesting to work there. But at the end, after a few years, I just decided I should dedicate my life entirely to whale and dolphin research. So unfortunately, my former boss said it's a pity that whales are not made of wood. Okay, so in 2015, I got re-inspired by all these projects, and I realized that doing research is very, very important. But if you want to do whale and dolphin conservation, you definitely have to consider people, right? Because that's nature on itself is doing fine, right? It's the interaction with the people that's the actual issue. So doing educational activities was really important to have conservation action. So within the project that I put in place with Association ELI-S, ELI-S means something. It means education, liberty, independence in science. Don't worry, there is no knowledge test after the presentation, okay? So ELI-S, that's fine. And within the project, the Cetacean Conservation Project of Nicaragua, I admit it's not a really original name of project, but within that, I developed this research program. I have also an education program where I give information sessions to fishermen, workshops on environmental science to kids, and I also collaborate with national universities. I have this training program with national and international students. So you got it right. I'm not from Nicaragua. I'm born and raised in Belgium. But Nicaragua is really a fabulous country, and there's so many things to do there. It's pretty poor, and people are not really aware about how fabulous the environment is there. So there's a big work to do in raising awareness. And then the conservation program, the last one of the project, is really, the impact, right? based on the education and based on the science to have real conservation impact. I'm giving annual reports to the government. I did a meeting 2 weeks ago with the Ministry of Environment to talk about the advancement of the project. I'm collaborating with them also just for whale watching guidelines and this kind of stuff. And I'm also organizing beach cleanups on Sundays when I'm bored, okay? And it was a joke, I'm absolutely not bored on the Sunday. Anyway, so those is just in a nutshell what I do. And it's totally independent, right? In 2017, I received an award from the Yves Rocher Foundation. Maybe it doesn't ring a bell, but it's a French foundation that gave me the award Terre de Femmes. It's for women that are acting for the conservation of the environment and that are including local communities in the conservation. In 2018, I received another award from the John Denham Award from Ecology Project International. That's also for researchers that are including local communities in the conservation. Then in 2020, well, actually in 2018, I got this conversation on a PhD defense of a friend of mine from the university. And he was like, so Joelle, what are you up to in these days? And I was like, well, I do this research in Nicaragua, you know. Just so that you know, I started this project by selling bookmarks in the street, so a real story. And I ran a small crowdfunding and I just went to Nicaragua. When people said, how did you get prepared for that? I will be honest, I just did the crowdfunding and I went there and hoping that everything will be fine, okay? So that was not a big plan, okay? But it worked out apparently, right? And so when I was talking to this professor, he was like, hey, so what are you up to? And I was like, well, I'm doing this field research and I'm writing papers. And he was like, so basically you're doing a PhD. I was like, well, if you summarize, yeah, I'm doing a PhD, but not really enrolled in a PhD program. You know what? You could get enrolled at the University of Brussels. And in 1 year, yes, I said 1 year, you can have your PhD. You're self-funded, but you could have it if you have one paper that's published. I was like, okay, deal, I'll take the challenge and I will do my PhD in 1 year. I didn't finish my PhD yet. It's 2023, right? Just for a small reminder. So I took the challenge. So there I am doing the self-funded PhD. Yeah, I'm really happy I started. Now I'm getting into the end, and I've heard that the last little bits is the hardest part of the PhD, and now I start understanding why people say that. So in 2021, I received a Young Researcher Award from Jane Goodall Institute. That award is actually given to researchers that are seeking to find peaceful interactions between man and animals. So in this case, with the development of whale watching guidelines and taking into consideration the whale behaviors in Nicaragua. And then in 2022, I'm super happy that I was part of the expert groups that were, so there were workshops that were organized. I'm sorry I didn't say all the flags, okay? I suppose you all know your flags super well. So the last one is Colombia. So there was one meeting in Colombia with WWF. I'll talk about it later, but basically to do a management plan for whales in the Pacific. And then IUCN was not in Colombia, it was in Costa Rica. And IWC, where I was with Jorge, that did a presentation earlier today. We also worked on a management plan for humpback whales. And now I'm in the States. Okay, it's the only flag that I actually described, do you know? And I'm very, very happy to be here. And I put a little arrow with, and to be continued. All right, so long story short, for me, it's really important to do science for a purpose. I'm not interested in filling up hard drives with information, and I really want to share the science through conferences, through talks, social media, through workshops, however I can share the science. I want to do that, and I think it's really, really important for researchers that they share their science, because that is how we will make the change in the minds of the people to actually protect the animals. All right, I stopped talking about myself, and I'll get back to what we are here for humpback whales, right? So you have seen this map already 5 times, okay? We are in Hawaii, in case you lost that information. And we all have the same issue that I push. Okay, so I will bring you to the dark side of the Pacific. I've noticed that even in the presentation of Jim, there was only one small arrow going in that area. Kind of, we don't really know what's happening there. So Nicaragua is in the middle of Central America, but since I'm supposing you don't really know Central America, we will do a tour of Central America. So the northern country is Guatemala. Then we have El Salvador. We have Honduras, very, very small coastline, by the way. It's just a bay, like a gulf. Nicaragua in the middle, Costa Rica, and then Panama. Panama known for the canal. All right, so I digged into the publications that are available on humpback whale research in Central America. So we'll do the tour with you again. So one of the first publications that was made was about migratory destinations from Costa Rica and Panama with the renowned scientist John Kalambokidis. He's a pioneer in Central America. And in 2004, 2008, there was the SPLASH project that was mentioned in other presentations, right? To look at the abundances and distribution and structure of the population in the North Pacific. I wasn't there at that moment, I was still studying. 2012, in Panama, there was a first publication, Kristen Rasmussen. She did her PhD thesis, so it actually included Panama and Costa Rica. She was mainly focused there. Then in 2017, we had a publication in Guatemala about whale distribution. In 2019, my publication I talked about earlier. And then in 2021, there was a SPLASH 2 where we got some regional technical reports. So that's it. Okay. So what about this publication in 1997? So John Kalambokidis found this connection with California. So you see that arrow that Jim drew, that's this one, okay? So there's not much that was known about specific migratory destinations in Central America. Then he did another publication, but with always including that, I'm sorry, I'm pointing, that's that arrow, okay, the same one. And then Kristen Rasmussen showed actually the surveys they did in Central America, so it's quite limited. You see in Nicaragua, there is like one line. The same for the other countries, Guatemala, El Salvador. Costa Rica a little bit more, but most of the effort was actually located in this area. So Central America, so this map, I'm surprised no one showed it. It's a Bettridge et al., and they determine different, distinct population segments. There's a whole discussion about using the DPS as an official term or not, but just for the sake of the speech here, I will use the DPS. So this is specifically for humpback whales, right? So the star is where Hawaii is located, and then again, Central America. Like you can see on the map, like in blue, it's like they're not at risk, and yellow is threatened. So the Central American population, so based on genetics and photo identification, was determined that it's threatened. So we need some information about that population. In terms of population size estimates, in the SPLASH one, it was determined that there were 500 to 700 individuals. So there were different estimates made on different techniques, but okay, 500 to 700. So it's not a lot, right? It's a very, very small population. In 2021, with the SPLASH 2, it was determined it was 1,496, very precise. But I want to emphasize that this number is not including southern Mexico. If you remember, Jorge said that southern Mexico was considered part of the Central American breeding ground. So in this estimate, just to be consequent for comparisons, I didn't include it here. All right, so the annual increase without southern Mexico is 1.6%. So I just put for the comparison, in Australia, it's the annual increase is 10.5%, and in Hawaii is 6.5%. So 1.6 is okay, it's a positive number, but it's still not really great. Also for a reference, in the feeding grounds in the US West Coast, there are about 5,000 individuals, of course, from different breeding grounds, and the annual estimated increase is 8%. So there is something wrong in this number, and honestly, we don't know why exactly the population is not increasing that much. So now I'm going to focus specifically on Nicaragua. So when I started in 2015, like having this idea and selling bookmarks, I was like, that would be a great idea to have 2 study sites. And because I knew that they were going to build an interoceanic canal in 2016, and I said, okay, we should have one, so the canal would be more or less here. Okay, so I should have one impacted site and one control site. Very logic. So in the northern part of the country, it's called Padre Ramos. That's a natural reserve. And I collected data there between 2016 and 2018. I just want to emphasize I had 2 teams because I can't split myself in 2 yet. But at the moment, so we had 2 teams of volunteers working in the field. So in the northern part of the country, you have the illegal use of bombs. So I don't know if you know those artisanal bombs that they just throw it and then they kill everything and then they fish the fish. So that's how it works. But that can have, of course, impacts on marine mammals. There is no formal study. I think in the Philippines, I saw there was a study about the impact of bombs on marine mammals, if I'm not wrong. And in the northern part of the country, well, it's a natural reserve, but it's a natural reserve where people are actually living in it. So it's not like a reserve with a pristine area. It's just like there's a lot of things going on there. So it's on the paper a natural reserve. And then you have only national tourism. And in the south, you have San Juan del Sur, where I've been focusing mainly my efforts between 2016 and 2023. And that would be the potential impacted site by the canal. And it's a touristic place where you have national and international tourism, and there is no use of bombs there. I'm just mentioning it so you know that there are some differences. I just want to emphasize that the canal is not there, okay? They never started. I'm not sure they will ever do it. But anyway, I have the information there, and just in case they decide to do it. I decided to put beautiful pictures because I saw that everyone was putting a lot of beautiful pictures. I have some too. So on the left side, you have San Juan del Sur Bay. And actually, this is on a good day where the water looks very blue and beautiful. I showed to 2 or 3 people in this room the sea state today, and it's absolutely not this. It's a very windy place. I also wanted to put a little picture of the boat. It's a 6-meter fiberglass boat where we do the research on it. And yeah, just a humpback whale in case you forgot how it looks like. So I wanted to analyze the migratory timing of the whales observed in Nicaragua. So what did I do? I took pictures of the flukes, like more or less all the researchers in the world. And like, you know, the flukes or the tails are unique as our fingerprints. I created a database of the last 6 years. I don't include 2022 and 2023. So 6 years of data, which includes 154 individuals. I have more individuals, but only 154 were recaptured. And then I combined with the world famous platform Happy Whale, okay? And we got 2,970 recaptures for the 154 animals. So there are animals I saw 2-3 times, and others I saw 60 times, okay? So that's kind of pooled. Right, so I analyzed that and I made a little graph where you can see where the whales were recaptured. So the red is the breeding ground, okay, and the blue is the feeding ground. Warm, red, cold, blue. So we have one whale apparently, or a few whales seen in October, and they were recaptured until April. And then interestingly, you see that some whales were remaining in the feeding areas with, of course, peaks between July and October. So that's pretty interesting. That's part of my my PhD. And then, because I'm doing this analysis between the two study sites, I decided to look at the migratory destinations of the whales on the two study sites, because also I've noticed that I had a little amount of recaptures between the two study sites, maybe like 4 or 5 whales that were recaptured between the two study sites. That really called my attention. I was wondering, maybe they're migrating somewhere else. So I just made that image like Jorge did. And we can see that the whales were seen between British Columbia and Southern California, but most of the whales were recaptured in California. Then I will, on the next slide, okay, there will be like a little video, and we will watch it a few times because there are several things we need to look together. But I will tell you what you have to look at. So you have the months of the year, okay, and you have those dots. So those dots are the recaptures that I plotted per month. So independently of the individuals, where were they recaptured? So the more red that the bullet is, the more whales we were seeing. And so you actually can see how the whales were moving based on recaptures of the animals. So after you notice that the months are passing by, you look at the little dots, how they are moving, and it's pretty interesting to see the spatio-temporal movement of the whales. And then there is another little thing I want you to look at, is this little circle. And this circle is actually moving, okay? And you see February, March, April. I just want you to recall that this circle is moving. You will understand why later. After that, after this analysis, I was wondering, okay, is there any kind of site fidelity? So are there the whales from northern Nicaragua and southern Nicaragua recaptured somewhere else? So I did an analysis. It might look a bit scary, but it's okay. So we have the red ones. I use the color code to make it easier. So NNI is northern Nicaragua, and SNI is southern Nicaragua, right? So you see that northern Nicaragua, based on the recaptures, were recaptured. So here you have it on the map to make it more visual. So in the northern of the Nicaragua were recaptured in Guatemala, southern Mexico. They were recaptured in Baja California. And then they were recaptured in northern California. And if we look to southern Nicaragua whales, they were recaptured on mainland Mexico most often. So they have a preference for this area rather than the others have another preference for this area. Anyway, so the southern Nicaraguan whales are doing this path are mostly encountered in the southern and Central California. And then we have some random whales like seen only in Costa Rica. Probably they were just passing by and there was no connection with Costa Rica. And then in Panama, they were most seen in Oregon. And sorry, I forgot southern Mexico. I made a mistake. I said it's Guatemala and El Salvador. And then southern Mexico was more recaptured in British Columbia and Washington. So that's pretty interesting. Because when I saw this presentation on the Hawaiian Islands, there was like this, it was observed that the whales were seen in a certain area of the Hawaiian Islands and on another one, so that there was kind of a separation. It's straight away I was thinking, that's something similar I've been seeing. So probably there is like a more fine scale site fidelity than probably previously that was previously thought. And I think like this is this might give some interesting insight for whale researchers to see that actually those sites need special attention because you have different groups of whales going there. Central America, like I think you've noticed, it's not an island. So most of the breeding grounds that were presented here are actually almost all, minus Mexico islands. I'm not talking about the offshore breeding sites, right? That's an island, but we are actually on the continent, right? So that's going to influence a lot what we're observing, and probably explaining a lot of differences with what you observe in islands. But anyway, so Central America is composed of gulfs, bays, coastal lagoons, and intertidal areas and barrier. And there is a strong shallow thermocline. It's also, well, Central America is located in the Eastern Tropical Pacific. So that orange line, so it's quite a big area, right? And I put this circle, do you recognize this circle of the image? That's the Costa Rica Dome. Well, nowadays they want to call it the Central American Dome because they don't want a war between Nicaragua and Costa Rica. It's a joke, okay? They are not going to do a war. So this is so the Central American Dome. It's better, politically. I will explain a bit more about it. So the Central American Dome, yeah, I got it. So CRD's Costa Rica Dome, okay. Central American Dome is an open ocean upwelling region. So upwelling is really when you have the nutrients that are stuck in the bottom and it's coming at the surface and is getting available and it's promoting generally feeding events, or increasing the productivity of the waters. So it gives a high primary and secondary production, and there is usually a higher density of marine fauna, including cetaceans, also marine birds, and this compared to other Central America ecosystems. And this likely influenced, the productivity in certain areas of Central America. So why am I saying all this? This is the famous first publication I made. It's a note, okay, it's not like a full paper, but still, it's super cool. It's like feeding behaviors of humpback whales in breeding areas. When I went to Nicaragua, people were like, fishermen, they were like, yeah, whales are feeding here. I'm like, no. I read in the literature, okay, they're not feeding in breeding areas. I was really sure, but I was like, okay, keep your mind open, maybe. And so when I was on the boat, and exactly at this picture, I said, oh my God, this is a publication, okay? So I took this picture, still professional, right? And I wrote the publication. I got other pictures of whales feeding. And that's pretty interesting. I'm fascinated by those feeding whales. Why? The first question is, are these feeding behaviors occasional? So, which means the whale is swimming and there is just sardines swimming by, and then me, let's eat, and then ciao, I'm leaving, and then next year you go in the same place, it will never happen again. So that would be occasional. Or is it annual? Like if you come every year, you would see over and over again this kind of behaviors. I see that every year. I keep on saying that, but all the scientists are kind of against this idea of feeding and breeding, because I think they were like me, like, no, they're breeding, not feeding. So they're like, yeah, but it is probably occasional, all right? I know that I have a group of whales in Nicaragua. I give them names because I see them over and over again. Like I see them all the time and they have names. And actually I'll even call that the feeding group. Also a very original name. Right. So I'm wondering, why do all these animals display feeding behaviors? Why would they do that? Is it really just like very, occasional, in the sense that there is food, like a little snack, we're not hungry, we walk out, there is some biscuits, we will eat it. We're not hungry, but we will just eat it, right? I don't know if it's that, or if it's just like they're not having enough food in the feeding areas and then they're compensating in that area because they know there will be food on a yearly basis. Or is it a strategy of certain males that are saying like, I could eat so I can stay a little bit longer, and then maybe find a female and augment their chances to reproduce? A lot of questions. So the question is, are only males eating, or are females also having the same idea? Like, hey, if you stick around, I want to stick around too and eat a little bit more. I don't know. And like I said, why would they do that, right? Just so that you know, this was the third record of whales feeding in breeding areas after Southern Australia, Western Australia and Southern Africa. I'm mixing them up. So that was super, super cool. Well, it's still cool. So I'm wondering also if this feeding group, since it's the same whales, and I see that there are like, I literally have a list of whales and I'm like, oh, Galoom is there, and then maybe Raphael is around, and usually I have a list and there, usually I see them again. And I was like, wow, I think like, humpback whales do not have a social structure like dolphins. And I was like, I'm pretty sure there is kind of a humpback whale social structure. And then one day I was at the supermarket and I read my Marmam mails, and then I saw social structure in feeding whales in British Columbia. I was like, damn, they got it before me. So there is like, so there is definitely something in there, right? That there is maybe a feeding group with a social structure. So I'd like to investigate that more. And it really runs through my head all the time to know why they're doing that, who is doing that, and so on and so on. Many questions. We can discuss that in the coffee break if you want. Also, I wanted to take advantage of making a summary of the social groups that are encountered in Central America based on my colleagues that are, so those are all research groups like in Mexico, right? Those points are just where research groups are located. And you see that competitive groups, so you have 1% of your observations are competitive groups. I think that since I arrived here, I saw maybe 3 or 4, So I'm like, the other day I saw one competitive group and I was like, that's amazing. And so people were like, yeah, there's a lot of whales in Nicaragua. I'm like, this is 3% of the observations competitive groups. And those, I love them because they show their tails so often. Otherwise, it's just really, really hard to get tail pictures in Nicaragua because we have we don't have those whales that are showing the tails all the time. So it's quite challenging. But anyway, the point I wanted to make is that, well, in the two extremes, we have 1%, and then in El Salvador, in Costa Rica, 5%, and then, in the middle here in Nicaragua, 2 to 3%. So it's not a lot. That might be due to the fact that the population is very small, and they don't have enough whales to actually form these big groups, and they don't want to waste their energy in fighting, So maybe they're adopting another reproductive strategy. Just an idea I'm throwing here. I don't have any information on that. And now if we look to the mother-calf pairs, that's pretty interesting. So let's look at it together. We have Guatemala, 21%, and then we have El Salvador, more or less the same, 20%. Then we have northern of Nicaragua, 30 to 43%. So, and then if you go down, look at this 7%. You're like, whoa, what happened here? Then again, 7%, and then south is 57% and 30%. That's interesting, right? Well, I find it very interesting. Like, why would that drop in this way? Again, remember that circle I showed you that was located more or less here? That's the Costa Rica dome, or sorry, the Central American dome, right? The Central American dome is characterized by those cold waters. And you know that mother calf pairs are looking for warm waters, exactly. You're paying attention, I like it. Okay, so perhaps, I'm just saying something that might be part of future research, is perhaps they're kind of avoiding this area and like, okay, or of course you have 57% of their observations, so, or they're like, let's go quick, and so they go fast and we don't see them, or they stay in this area, or they might go to another route, I don't know, but I really don't see a lot of mother calf pairs. I got a master's student that was studying this year mother calf pair categories, like based on what Rachel Cartwright did with the dorsal fin bending. And it seems that, I keep on pushing on this button, it seems that we have only category 2, so older calves. Even in January, we don't have young calves. So I'm very surprised because, of course, after that birth in Madagascar, I read all the papers about mother calf pairs, and I got a fascination about mother calf pairs, thanks to Rachel Cartwright. So I started doing that dorsal fin bending thing, and I don't know why. Where are they born? If they're not born, well, at least in Nicaragua, they're not born there. So are they born earlier in maybe southern Mexico or just really early October, November? I don't know. So that's also another part of the research that needs to be done, but also on a regional scale, because I have only one piece of the puzzle and I need to see what the others have. But I can tell you that having a dorsal fin bending picture stuff, it's really not easy. You need to teach the whales to put them in the right angle, you know, and they're not always collaborating. Right, so this is like an interesting perspective. Then we have the singers. So Jim, that's for you. You see that there are some areas where there is no acoustics, so we don't know. In Guatemala, 22%. In the northern part of the country of Padre Ramos, 11%. In my PhD, I'm suggesting that the northern part is actually a calving area, right? And in the southern, maybe more reproduction / feeding / who knows? And then here, but which is surprising is that I have only detected 2% and my colleagues on the other side of the border, 39. I suspect it's because also John has something to do with these numbers, because he told me that when he collected data, he was really focused on singers. So probably he has a higher number of detected singers compared to me. And I didn't have a hydrophone all the time, so maybe that influenced it. Yesterday I submitted the revision of this manuscript about the first description of the whale song in Nicaragua, based on 2018 recordings. And there is one other paper that was published in Costa Rica. That's it, end of the story. So we need more data. So actually, I'm trying to have 3 consecutive years. I was talking to Jim about it. So I have 2021, 2022, and 2023. I hope that I can have the information, and I will explain you why it's even more exciting than what you think. Nicaragua is a very, very unique place. Why? Well, I forgot to say that I also have a citizen science program where people gave me a tale. Here, this one, in September 2017. September, right? So September, that's not the season. We see whales between, if you remember, January, April, more or less, that's where we see the whales in Nicaragua. So I was a bit surprised, and then I looked in my Excel sheets that I have since 2016. I have 400 sightings. For here, probably it's not a lot, but for there, yes. So I was looking at it, I was like, that's weird. I have whales in July, August, September, October. I'm like, what's wrong with these whales? Like, why are they here? And then I remembered that there is also a breeding area in Peru, Colombia, Costa Rica, Panama. There are whales from Antarctica. So I went to see my professor and I said, there are whales in Nicaragua from Antarctica. I was like, Joelle, you don't have any proof. You know, we scientists, we need proofs before saying something. And I was like, yeah, no, I'm pretty sure, gut feeling, you know. 1 week later, I got a notification of happy whale, but literally 1 week later, and I got a recapture. You know where? Antarctica! Woohoo! So I wrote a paper about it. But okay, I was like, hooray! Okay, so I wrote, like, I plotted all the sightings of all these fishermen and tour operators and people with a nice house with a beautiful view on the ocean. I plotted that, and then I calculated the distance, and it was at least 8,000 kilometers. So we have the northernmost record of humpback whales from Antarctica, also in Nicaragua. And that's fascinating, because then that raises other questions. What's going on? Is there any interaction with the northern hemisphere population, with the southern hemisphere population? What's going on with the songs? Are the whales learning some songs from one another? Is it propagating north-south, south-north? You know, we don't know. A lot of things happening. Is there any reproduction? So doing some genetic work would be very, very interesting. Are their behaviors also different? Mother-calf pairs. I do have young and old calves in the same area. So definitely this Central America dome has something to do there, right? So I have some years of work there, I think, as you imagine, but I'm quite excited about it, because Central America, there's a lot of things to do there, specifically in Nicaragua. Also, it was asked to give an update about the whale watching regulations. So almost all the countries have a law, minus, well, Honduras, that little bay, they don't have whale watching, but I'm not sure they actually do whale watching there. And then Guatemala, they do have rules, but it's not a law. I just want to say that the 2021 law in Nicaragua, I have participated to that with the government to elaborate that. So I'm really happy because that was years of talking to the institutions, years of reaching out with the community talks. And then when they wanted to do this law, they said, Joelle, we want you to be there to help us and contribute to that law. So I'm really happy because that's a great achievement within the project. But as I mentioned here, laws do not protect whales. We have to enforce them, right? So we need to control that people are behaving. That's a job. So what I mentioned at the beginning, so with the IUCN, we identified important marine mammal areas. Okay, so that means that the institutions, like the government, if they want, they can use this official document that has been validated by a lot of experts and scientists to eventually have marine mammal protected areas. So that's also a big step forward. Then with WWF is also to protect migratory corridors, and the IWC, well, it's all work in progress, but that's a step forward for the region in terms of protection. So just to summarize, well, there's a lot of questions running through my mind. Sometimes I'm getting like a bit dizzy, so many things to do. So when I'm wondering, where are the cows born? Are they born in Mexico or in Central America? Why wouldn't they go that far? Because it's not that far, right? That's like the population from California, they do 5,000 kilometers. So we should have younger cows. While those from Antarctica, we have a mix of both. So there is something in there that I'd like to investigate more. The other question is, why would they feed, and all that feeding story. I'm running, there's a lack of time, so I'm going a bit quicker. The threats, well, vessel collisions, potentially fish entanglements. We are not trained like in Mexico for the entanglement, so that would be great to have that. I think in El Salvador they did it last year, but it would be nice to have it everywhere. Continue with the acoustics and see if there is any population connectivity between the two humpback whale populations. So, mahalo for your attention. Thank you again for your invitation. I'd like to thank a special member from Association ELI-S that came specially today to listen to this talk. Thank you, Ingrid, for coming. I really, really, really appreciate it. You can meet me still. I will be around. You can see me on the VIP Sunset Cruise, but also on the Ultimate Whale Watch. It's sold out, but okay, if you're there, I will be there. And please do not hesitate to get your merchandise. Okay, I brought them specifically from Nicaragua. I have silver rings made in Nicaragua and whale bracelets made by my lovely sister. She spends hours doing it, and they're super cool. It's not because it's mine, okay, but they're super cool. I'm also looking for partnerships, so if you want to support my research that is highly needed, please come to me. We can talk about it, and follow us on the social media. Thank you so much for your attention.
No time for questions. We have time for 2 questions. Anyone? Yeah, right here.
Have you found any correlation between
Yeah, so I didn't show that because I had only 40 minutes. I thought at the beginning it was not a lot. Well, it was a lot, and now I realize it's not a lot. But yes, I found correlation, but it's really, really interesting because if you look within the sites, there is no difference, but between the sites, there is statistical difference between both. So that makes also that gives you also other perspectives on how to look at your data. Sometimes we're looking at one side, but actually you should look at the bigger picture to understand how whales are actually choosing their areas and choosing to go, right? Specifically for social groups. So yes, I found some differences. The northern of Nicaragua is less deep, and then the southern of Nicaragua is deeper. Nevertheless, I like with mom calves, like in Undeep and on deep water, and the other groups in deeper water, it was not very clear. Yeah. Another question. In Nicaragua? Uh-huh. I think in California they eat sardines, no? Yeah, like in Nicaragua also they eat small sardines. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Thank you so much.